got a good one for you guys today.
We do. I feel like it's only right that we cover it. So,
yeah. So, welcome to Verified Therapist. We are going to go ahead and give a trigger warning because in this episode, we're going to talk about the new documentary, Quiet on Set, which discusses workplace abuse and also covers a lot of sexual abuse. So, this is triggering for anyone. Maybe skip this episode when we start talking about the main topic. Before we get into that, we got to start off with the highs and lows of the week. So you want to start us out?
My high of the week technically hasn't happened yet, but like I'm lit about it. I'm off tomorrow so I can get my fingerprints done.
Yay.
Which is like the last step where I can apply for licensure. So that's
exciting.
Good. Yeah, and it's only going to be a 3-day work week because I'm also off on Friday. So, yeah.
Look at you.
It's about to be a short week, so we love that. My low of the week is, I guess I don't really have I don't have a ton of lows for this week, which I guess is a good thing. I'm not complaining about that. But I haven't had any time to read. I talked about last week, I was like, I'm starting Touch of Chaos, and I'm so excited. I've had no time to read this week. So I'm feeling a little, distance from my book right now. So that's making me a little sad. So hopefully this week I will have some more time, especially with having some time off work.
Yeah, because that's what happens when you're an adult and you have to work.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you don't have time to enjoy the things that make us happy.
Yeah. I got home and I was dead every night this week. So I was laying in, because usually I'll read before I go to sleep, but I would pick up my Kindle and I'd get 2 sentences in and that would be it for me. I'd be gone. So I got nowhere.
That's why I started doing audiobooks too, because if I don't have the energy to actually move my eyes along the page, then I can listen to it. So I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks because Spotify has that where you can listen to 15 hours of audiobooks every month. So I've been doing that.
That's smart. Sometimes,
I mean, I travel a lot too, and you travel a lot too. So maybe that would be a good option for you.
While I'm on the road. Yeah, because usually I'll try to call people while I'm driving, but also not everybody's available when I'm driving. So it would maybe be I'm talking to someone without me actually talking.
Right now, I'm listening to The Paris Apartment because they put that on Spotify. And I was so excited when I saw that because I've been wanting to read that book forever.
Yeah. I'll have to read that next.
Because
I'll have to put it on my Goodreads.
Listening to a podcast.
And I love a good podcast. So, yeah, not really hard-hitting highs and lows this week. It's been a pretty even week. So I'm not going to complain about that. But what are your highs and lows?
Well, my highs and lows, I'm going to say that they tie in together. So my high for the week was watching the new Roadhouse movie because in this household, we love Roadhouse. It's mainly Josh. Josh is a huge Patrick Swayze fan. So every time I hear I'm he is watching Roadhouse again. And so I always, most of the time I'll go down there and watch it with him. So I was forced to watch Roadhouse the first time, the OG. So, and we've been talking about it ever since it was announced that Jake Gyllenhaal was going to be the new Dalton. We were don't really see it. But then again, he was in Southpaw. While I was watching the new one, I was oh yeah, he was in Southpaw.
He was, yeah.
And so I was so he has the kind of training to be this fighter. And the cool thing about Patrick Swayze, I don't know if anyone knows this, but he does his own stunts. Well, he did his own stunts.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. In all of his movies, he did his own stunts. So before Roadhouse, he trained in all kinds of martial arts and everything. He's a dancer as well. So that ties into fighting, all of this stuff. So we were is Jake Gyllenhaal really going to live up to this?
Yeah.
He did a damn good job. The whole movie was good. Big shout out to Lucas Gage. Phenomenal. job in
I've
this
heard good
movie.
things about him in that movie.
Yeah. Such a good job. So, like, the OG Roadhouse doesn't really have that much of a plot, I want to say.
Yeah.
Like, it's a lot of just Patrick Swayze, like, beating everybody's ass throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
The plot is there, but it's, like, also kind of like, what the fuck is happening, you know, every once in a while. Like, and then all of a sudden, like, a house is getting blown up, and you're like, where did this come from? Okay. But this new one has more of a plot than that one, and it's really good. Conor McGregor is, honestly, he's hilarious in it. He's like one of the antagonists, and he is so funny in this movie.
Which is kind of surprising to me.
Yeah, but he did a really good job, and, like, also, you see his ass throughout so much of this movie, and I'm just like, again, why are we seeing his ass? Why is he just naked right now?
Oh my god. Unnecessary nudity.
Yeah. We talked about that before.
Yeah.
But yeah, so going off of that, my low was, like, the reviews. So first of all, one of the reviews was like, this is shitty dialogue. Okay, it is a corny remake of an 80s movie. Like, Roadhouse originally is a corny ass movie. Like, this dude fights everyone. He always wins. He gets the girl.
Yeah.
Corny dialogue throughout.
It's your typical movie. Yeah.
Like, corny characters, all this stuff. Like, it's not supposed to be like some stellar, you know, I don't know, like, huge dialogue based movie. So that was, like, one of the complaints that I saw, and I'm like, y'all missed it completely.
After we talked about it yesterday, I was looking at reviews for it, and I did see that a lot. It was like, the dialogue's not great, and I'm like, okay, like you said, it wasn't coined as coming out as being like this great, massive dialogue focused motion picture, you know?
Not a lot of action movies are.
Yeah.
A lot of action movies are cheesy dialogue, and that's, like, the whole point, is you're supposed to say something, like, ridiculously stupid before you kill someone. Like,
Yeah.
That's the whole part of action movie.
Yeah.
And especially one from the 80s. Like, the 80s, all around, every single movie that you watch from the 80s has the most ridiculous dialogue out there. You just sit there and cringe. So,
yeah.
Again, they did a good job of keeping that. They did a good job of keeping, like, the overall feel of the original Roadhouse in this movie.
Yeah.
So, which was something that I was really shocked by. Like, just the whole time I was watching it, I was just like, wow, this is actually really, really good. And I was sitting there wondering, I was like, Josh has talked so much shit about this. I'm wondering what he thinks of it. And we get to, like, probably, like, 40 minutes left of it, and he was like, I hate to say it, but this is a really good movie. And then he complained about the ending of the movie. So I won't ruin the ending of the movie for people, but I thought it was a good ending. He's just dramatic.
He's nitpicky. He wants it to be perfect. Yeah, I don't blame him.
I sent a Snapchat to a bunch of my friends with it.
And he's like going off. Yeah.
He was so passionate about and he's still, like, if I got him in here right now to talk about it, he would let y'all know. He is very passionate. But another low that comes with, like, the reviews of this movie is some of the reviews that I saw on just, like, commenting on, like, Prime Video and, like, different review sites and everything, was people talking about the diversity in the movie, because it is a very diverse movie. It takes place in the Florida Keys,
which is a very diverse place, by the way.
Yes, a very diverse place. So people were talking about, like, the diversity, and they were saying it was some woke bullshit because it was a diverse movie. There was nothing about politics in the movie. Nothing at all. They said that a black woman shouldn't have owned the bar in the movie, and I wanted to fuck someone up.
And I want to say why. What does any of that, who gives a shit if they're black, white, gay, straight. Okay, like, it doesn't matter. Does not matter.
Nope. And a woman owning a bar, like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Seriously?
Heaven forbid a woman, like, do something of power in a male-dominated field. Heaven forbid.
Yeah, heaven forbid. And they were like, it was too woke. And I was like, because you actually watched a movie that looked like the world out there around you.
Mm-hmm.
Is that woke? Like, no, it's not.
What it is it's equal representation of minorities in entertainment, and that's needed and deserved. So that's actually what that is. So
heck yeah, it is. I mean, like it was the 80s in the original movie. Like, there was literally zero diversity in that movie.
Yeah. Because that was the times of movies and entertainment, and things are changing a little bit now.
Mm-hmm. Like, I want to watch a movie and have it look like the cast, like the world around me. Like, we live in a city that is one of the most diverse cities in the country because we have like a huge international center around us. So when I watch a movie, I want to see that.
And it's okay to see that.
That's not woke. That is just normal.
There is so much resistance to things that are different. And it's just so aggravating to watch that people, like, that's your criticism of a movie. That's what you have something to say about.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. I'm
gonna read like the actual comments that I found. Because when I tell you, I'm never like a keyboard warrior. Like, I don't get in fights with people on the internet at all. But I was very, very close. Okay. A lot of it, some of the worst acting I've seen in a while. Am I the only one who thought that was cool? Everyone up in here complaining. Literally. I thought it was cool too.
Yeah.
There's like 5,000 likes on that. Okay. Do people forget about the OG Roadhouse? Probably trying to write it like an 80s movie, but it looks like a modern movie. Corny lines, cool fight, hot babes. It's a simple recipe. People, not every movie is The Departed.
Yeah.
I think they removed a lot of the hateful comments because I'm not seeing what I saw yesterday.
As they should. They should remove that.
Yeah.
Because you shouldn't get a platform when you're racist and homophobic.
I need to get Jake Gyllenhaal pregnant. Oh my gosh. Okay. That's a good one. Seems like a lot of folks here don't know their ass from their face because they believe this movie is okay. The only good thing is seeing Jake Gyllenhaal with his shirt off. Somebody said, yeah, because the original Roadhouse was the best acting ever.
Yeah.
And the eye roll emoji. Yeah. It looks like they go prom for removing those hateful ass comments.
As you should, Prime.
Yeah, because I'm not seeing it. They're either really deep down there or they really did remove all of them. They could have been reported for sure. Because I'm not seeing what I saw yesterday. Moral of the story, go watch the new Roadhouse movie. It's actually really good. So we're going to hit on some recaps, and to follow up on what we talked about last week, we want to make a formal apology to Kate Middleton.
We're real sorry. And William. I'm real sorry to him too.
Yeah, we like fed into the conspiracy theories and everything, and that was not what I was expecting to come out.
No.
And for those of you who don't know, Kate Middleton announced that she was diagnosed with cancer and she is undergoing chemotherapy right now. So that was a big part of the reason why she didn't want to make an appearance, but it sounds like because of everyone feeding into the conspiracy theories, she had to come out and make a statement probably before she was ready, which I feel really bad about.
Yeah. We're really sorry, Kate.
And I mean, I feel bad for her kids because not only does their mom have cancer, but their grandpa has cancer.
I know. It's kind of crazy that it's happening like that, like so close together like that.
Yeah. And then the queen died of cancer.
Cancer's running rampant around the royal family right now. But we do wish Kate well and hope that treatment is effective and she gets healthy.
I feel very deeply, as someone who had a parent have cancer, and her kids are about the age, like the younger ones are about the age that I was when my dad was diagnosed with cancer. I feel for them. I really do, because it's really scary, and just like the big C word in general is terrifying.
Yeah.
Even if it is like a curable cancer, it's still absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Because anything can happen. And your immune system is so fragile going through chemo too.
And you're so sick. Your thing about chemo is it takes away all the good stuff, like it takes away the bad stuff. It just kind of kills everything. So, you're so sick, and it's just a hard treatment to go through.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot on the body. They pretty much talk about chemo like you have to pretty much kill your body to live. Yeah. So it destroys your body completely. It's really, really sad. So, well, anyways, to moving on to some less heavier topic before we go into like a huge heavy topic. We are going to talk about Vanderpump and do a recap of that.
Oh, and there's a lot to recap this week.
What do you want to start with? Tom comparing himself to Scott Peterson?
Okay, I was going to say that because it's just so terrible. And I'm so sick of Tom comparing himself to to killers. Yeah. Not necessarily serial killers, but killers. Men who kill their wives or significant others, specifically.
Yes. Don't you think it's really weird that he keeps saying stuff like that? I mean, like, George Floyd, no. But, right. OJ?
Yeah.
And Scott Peterson?
Yeah.
Why
and when Schwartz is like, oh, didn't he kill his wife? And he's like, allegedly. Oh. Was that an important correction to make?
No. And even Schwartz's face says that wasn't a necessary thing to say.
He does not do himself any favors. If this was supposed to be his redemption season, he's doing terrible at it.
Yeah, he's doing a really shit job at redeeming himself. And you know who else is supposedly having the best season so far is Lala. And to be honest, like, I'm a huge Lala fan because we're both Virgos. And I understand a lot of things that she says, and I'm just like, ooh, but I'm not understanding a damn thing she says this season. I'm just like, girl, what are you talking about? Like, you are not in your soft girl era by pointing at Katie like this and being disengaged. That is not soft girl.
I hate when she does that because it's like she always puffs herself out to be the scariest or the baddest in the room. And I hate when she does that. I think that doesn't serve her as well as she thinks that it does. Obviously, it's some kind of defense mechanism, but I just think that it makes you, I don't know, why don't you disengage instead of telling someone else to disengage from you? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're as equally a part of this argument as the other person is. So,
yeah.
I don't agree with what's happening right now. And I think they thought the audience would be more agreeable than what the audience is. The audience is not responding how they thought the audience was going to respond, I don't think.
Oh, they're not. Like, none of us are. All of us are seeing Lala and Scheana right now, and we're just like, what the fuck are you guys even doing right now?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. Lala was so upset when Schwartz went and played pickleball with Randall after everything. And that wasn't even like Schwartz being like, I want to be friends with him. It was just kind of like oh, he invited me to play pickleball. I wanted to go play pickleball, whatever. Yeah. And now Lala and Scheana want to be friends with Tom Sandoval. And all Ariana is saying, okay, if you want to be friends with him, then I don't necessarily want to be friends with you.
Right.
Because I don't want this person to have access to my life at all in any shape or form. So I'm not saying like you have to pick one way or the other, but I'm just saying like if you hang out with him, then I don't want to be around you.
And also, Lala says things like, well, Scheana's a grown person and she can pick what she does.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Tom Schwartz was a grown person when he went to play pickleball with Randall, and that was a problem. Sure. So
she was so pissed about that. It's a lot of like jealousy.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm looking at Lala right now, and her and Katie, you know, they had an argument last episode. Mm-hmm. And then this episode, they had a lunch where they talked it out and everything. And I thought the talk was really good, you know? But then it cuts to the confessional. And in the confessional, Lala was just like, Katie is so comfortable being on this war path, and I'm not. I'm on this path of healing. Mm-hmm. And I was just kind of like, that just made that entire conversation irrelevant.
Right.
Like it just cut it all, just wadded it up and threw it away, because that comment alone says the apology wasn't genuine between you guys.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like Katie is not on a war path.
I don't think so either. It's not like Katie is like going out of her way to publicly like shame, or she's not like going to the Tom's bar and like attacking Tom Sandoval out of nowhere. She doesn't want to be around him, and if the conversation comes up, she speaks her mind on it, but she's not like actively seeking him out and causing problems.
No. And like, I mean, she made those comments in the last episode of just kind of like the next person that talks about Tom Sandoval, like, I'm going to jump off this balcony. Mm-hmm. And it's because, like, they were talking about trying to be friends with him and trying to point out all the good things that he did.
Yeah.
But not only did Tom obviously cheat on Ariana, so this impacts Ariana.
Yeah.
He ruined Katie's marriage. He was a huge factor in why Schwartz and Katie's marriage fell apart. So she has every right in this world to shit talk him. And not only did he do that, he was just very like verbally abusive to her throughout the years in general.
Yeah.
Like,
I was gonna say, so like,
mean to her.
They never got along in the beginning. No. And throughout Vanderpump Rules, you see them continuously just have these problems with each other. So like, why is everybody like not surprised, but like want to shame her for not liking him? She's not liked him since the beginning.
Yeah. And he is also like, if you go back and watch, he has kind of plotted against her from the beginning to kind of paint her as this horrible person. Like the whole incident, you know, the Tequila Katie shit.
Yeah.
You know, when they were they in Mexico when Tom Schwartz like threw the drink on Katie?
Yeah, they were in Mexico.
Yeah. And Tom Sandoval, you see him go back and kind of be like, well, if Katie wasn't doing this, then you wouldn't have thrown the drink on her.
Right, yeah.
And it's like, bro, what?
Yeah, all of it is like to escape any accountability from Schwartz.
From the beginning, you see that BS.
Yeah.
So of course Katie doesn't like him and doesn't trust him. Doesn't trust his intentions with any of these girls. Yes, Scheana is a grown person, but segue into Scheana and Dancing with the Stars. She was not a grown person in that conversation with Ariana.
No. And here's my problem. My one of many with the whole world anyways. But she went to Lisa, went to Lala, went to all of these people, and she said, I'm upset because she got Dancing with the Stars and I did not. So Ariana confronts her and says, I hear that you're upset with me for this. And Scheana says, well, I'm just upset because you didn't tell me first, basically. Like, that's not her exact words, but that's the summary of it. And so Ariana walks away from that conversation feeling like, oh, well, she's upset because I didn't tell her. That's not what she was saying to everybody else.
Nope.
And that's manipulative. Like, and Lala and Scheana can paint that as like, and I'm not saying that it's not people-pleasing, but people-pleasing at times is manipulative.
Yep.
people pleasing, like, even though it's, like, not in a narcissistic, like, evil intentioned way all the time, it's manipulating this person to like you and to not be upset with you. And I feel like that's what she was doing. She was like, well, I'm going to give you the information that it doesn't sound as bad if I say I'm upset that you didn't tell me, as it does, like, the genuine reason I'm jealous and I'm upset that I didn't get it.
She did a podcast with Heather McDonald, which I have so many thoughts about Heather.
Yeah.
Anyways, so in this podcast, she was talking and saying, well, I'm really close friends with Charlie D'Amelio, who won Dancing with the Stars the year prior. Scheana, first of all, Sheena's close friends with everybody, apparently.
Yes, yeah.
Oh my God, you can't be best friends with everyone, okay? Anyways, let's move on.
That's another thing. She was like, Ariana used my person. And I'm like, how many persons have you had?
Yeah, like, now you're
Everyone
best
is your
friends
person.
with the D'Amelio family.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Yeah.
Okay. So she went to an after party with the D'Amelio family of Dancing with the Stars, and these people were coming up to Scheana that were producers of Dancing with the Stars and was like, Scheana, oh my God, we would love to have you on Dancing with the Stars, and like blah, blah, blah. So Scheana started taking dance lessons. And then when it was presented, you know, everything was like, yeah, we're putting your name in to be considered, all this stuff. So she was like, okay, I'm still being considered. I'm still taking dance lessons. And then when everything came out, and then all of a sudden, like, Ariana comes out as being being the next person on Dancing with the Stars, Scheana was like, called up the person that was like putting her name in, and he was just like, well, I mean, with everything going on, like,
that makes the most sense.
Yeah, Ariana makes the most sense right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, Scheana didn't like that. And I understand the frustration of being told multiple times, like, hey, you're going to get this, you're being considered, all this stuff. I understand that. But then to, like, put the blame on Ariana and be like, well, you didn't tell me that you were getting it, and I was talking to you about this stuff, and still, you know, she signed an NDA. Like,
yeah,
when
she wasn't allowed to say anything. When
you sign an NDA, you can't tell anyone anything.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Broadway. Like, there was another thing that came out, and, you know, in the after show they were talking, and Brittany was like, didn't the same thing happen with, you know, Chicago? Broadway is an airtight. When you can't tell anyone anything.
Lala should know about NDAs. Lala and Randall had people signing NDAs. Should you not know about what an NDA is? Like, be so for real. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I completely forgot about that storyline.
Yeah.
So the Witches of Wayo were like, which is Katie, Kristen, and Stassi. That's what they called themselves, the Witches of West Hollywood. Yeah. So they confronted Ariana and was just like, didn't you sign an NDA not to talk about Lala? And Ariana was like, no, I didn't sign an NDA. I would have never signed an NDA.
Lala, you were passing them out like candy 4 years ago. So, like, why is she not coming to Ariana's defense to Scheana and saying she signed an NDA? She can't say anything. Because Lala, her brain works very logically in a lot of situations. I'm not going to say in every situation. But why is she not talking to Scheana and saying, Scheana, be so for real? She can't say anything. You know how this business works.
She is clouded by jealousy. Like, that's why they say jealousy is an evil monster. Because I really do strongly believe that Lala is so jealous that Ariana gets cheated on, and her relationship blows up, and she gets all these deals. She gets Dancing with the Stars. She gets to be on Broadway. She gets all this publicity, and all of these, like, wonderful things are happening for Ariana, whereas when everything came out about Randall being this, like, horrible person, and Lala didn't get anything.
Mm-hmm.
Lala kind of lost everything. Like, she moved into like a really small apartment. Like,
Mm-hmm.
she didn't get money because they weren't married. You
Yeah.
know, she didn't get really the same amount of treatment that Ariana has gotten,
Mm-hmm.
which I understand. That's really frustrating. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I can understand her pain of like, well, all of this happened to me and like no one was signing me up for Dancing with the Stars or doing everything.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it was two completely separate situations. Like,
Mm-hmm.
your fiance came out as being a fucking sexual predator.
Mm-hmm. We didn't watch that
Yeah.
on the show.
We didn't watch 10 years of this couple play out in front of us
Mm-hmm.
and see the beginning of their relationship to the end of their relationship. Like,
Yeah.
she wouldn't even talk about him for 2 years. Like,
Right.
for 2 years, she was pretty much just like, my man, my man.
Mm-hmm.
And we had no idea who her man was. And
I'm thinking about James being like, "'Cause the fat man said this." Remember when he would say that about everything? Oh
oh my
God.
God. Oh, James is such a troll. He's great.
There was no investment in Randall.
Yeah.
We
There's
saw
absolutely none.
Randall a little bit the past couple of years, but I feel like Tom, we saw his relationship with Kristen. We were invested in Tom as a person that we had been watching. I've ever like dated Tom, that I love Tom, no. But I liked Tom on Vanderpump before all of this happened. Like,
Yeah.
There was investment in him and Ariana's relationship because we saw so much of that chemistry there. That we just did not see with Randall and Lala because either it didn't exist or they didn't show it. And Randall and Lala kind of started off putting a sour taste in everyone's mouth because
Yeah.
there was this huge age gap, power discrepancy. They were sleeping together and he was buying her Rolls Royces. Like, was it a Rolls Royce? So,
it was a
like,
Range Rover.
Oh, a Range Rover. So, like, there's like this power dynamic already that the show is seeing that we're like, we already don't really like this that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And she was just like, I bought that Range Rover myself. To this day, she will say that she bought that Range Rover. And I'm
No,
like,
she didn't. Get real. And that's like, whatever. Like, I'm not saying that she deserved for that to happen.
mm-hmm.
But I think part of what made Scandival was the shock.
Yeah.
When Randall, his stuff came out, there wasn't a ton of shock.
No.
He was a producer in Hollywood, which we're going to go into today on how they're all trash.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's not really a lot of surprising stuff that came out.
Yeah. While Tom, we saw him be shitty and cheat on Kristen, and we saw their tumultuous relationship. And even when Miami Girl showed up after him and Ariana started dating, we still saw them not have the same relationship that he had with Kristen. Like, there wasn't, they might have had it behind closed doors, but we didn't see it.
Right.
You know, like we saw with Kristen and him. And there was so much animosity between those two that, like, the huge switch to Ariana, like, we all thought that he was a super changed man. He would never cheat on her. He would never do X, Y, and Z. Their relationship was so different because that's what was playing out on screen before us. So, of course, when everything came out, we were like, where the hell did this come from?
Yeah. It was so crazy because literally the week before it came out, a friend of mine at work had started watching Vanderpump. She was talking to me about Tom and Ariana, and she was like, I just love their relationship. They seem so solid. And then literally a week later, this breaks. And again, it has the shock factor. Like I said before, I remember reading the story and being like, what? So, like, I'm sorry, but it didn't have the same steam for, like, a big public scandal that Tom and Ariana had, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, like, Lala and Scheana both are just jealous. And it's okay to be jealous. Like, I don't blame them for being jealous. Like, when you get cheated on and then you get put into like a 1,600 square foot apartment where you were living in like this huge mansion in Beverly Hills, you know, that's difficult.
Yeah. But none of that is Ariana's fault.
No. And like, you don't get the same deals as Ariana. Like, that's difficult. But it's not Ariana's fault. She didn't ask for this to happen to her. And she also didn't ask for all of these deals to fall into her lap. She was just like, she saw an opportunity and she was like, you know what? I need money right now. So like, this is a perfect way for me to get money.
And honestly, this is a perfect way for me to take back my life that this person has just destroyed. I don't really blame her. So
no matter how jealous I get, I can't imagine talking about my friends like that.
No.
Jax made his lovely appearance.
Came out. Oh God. He came out ready. He just came out ready to go. Yeah. I mean, there was barely any time for any like greetings because he was just like, well, he sits down. He's like, well, I guess I'm just going to go ahead and lay into Tom Sandoval for 5 minutes straight.
He's like, man, I saw a picture of you the other day and I was like, God damn, he looks 50.
And he said something about his white nail polish. Gotta lose that.
He was like, yeah, but I mean, you look good now. He's like, you gotta lose the white nail polish though. He's like, what the fuck is that?
You could tell that he just had like this pent up, just like, coming in hot. And I don't know if that's because, which by the way, the transition from Vanderpump to the Valley the other night they did great on that.
Perfect.
Yes, they did such a good job on that. But I don't know if they were like, Jax, you're really going to go in hard because you're about to be introducing the Valley. So like, but Jax has no problem doing that because literally that interaction was so Jax.
Yes.
Like, I can't explain it. It's the same as we've seen the past 10 years.
Yeah. Like having those boys plus Brock sitting there, you know? Yeah. It's just like what we saw OG Surdays on in the first season of like Jax laying into one of the boys and then like Tom Schwartz sitting there being like, oh God, oh no.
About to have a panic attack. Yeah.
I love how it cuts to him in the confessional and he's just like, so bad. This is
so bad. And Jax, when he like is like in that mode, he's just talking so fast.
Yeah.
And he's just going and it's one thing after another. Just boom, 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 boom. And then he'll be like, I've made mistakes. We've all made mistakes, you know? And I'm like, Jax, and I do see Tom Sandoval's point of like, I really don't owe you an explanation, you know? Because Jax has done some stuff himself.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It was just very on brand.
But yeah, I also thought it was really funny that he just like went in on him and then was just like, yeah, but how's everybody doing? You know? Yeah. It's like, he was like, I'm done going off on you. So like, now let's have fun.
Yeah. Let's get to the real.
Didn't let anyone have any kind of transition into anything. Like, to take it all in and process it. He was just like, let's have some drinks, guys. Let's have fun. It's like, what?
And then Tom Schwartz is like, all right, we're going to order some food. And Jack's like, all right, I'm going to head out.
Yeah.
I got to go. Which, who knows, like, how that, like, really went, like, because obviously they were setting that up so that Jax could, like, leave and go to the Valley or whatever. So, like, you know, who knows, but.
Yeah, that was a really cool transition. So they had Jax in the like Vanderpump confessional, and then they had him like walk into the Valley confessional, and then that's what started the Valley episode. And it was so cool. I loved it. Like,
I loved it too. I think they did an excellent. Whoever came up with that, y'all should get a bonus.
Yeah, and then they had Kristen Doty talking as like the narrator and everything of the transition. I thought that was really cool too. Jax knows how to make good reality TV.
100%.
And I saw that the entire time watching The Valley of like Jax going around and putting little nuggets in people's brain about Kristen wanting a baby.
Yeah.
And being like, she's not ready to have a kid. She shouldn't have a kid. She doesn't even like this person. Like all this stuff, like just feeding little nuggets to everyone. And then like finally it all comes together and they have this big conversation and it's a huge blow up. And I'm like, this is why Jax should always be on reality TV.
Because he knows what he's doing. He basically produces. And we all know that I don't like Kristen. But I kind of felt bad for Kristen in that moment because I'm like, what is it all these people's business if she wants to have a kid or not?
It's not anyone's business. And I asked that question too. Like, I know I asked you that before it was even talked about of like, does Kristen just want a kid? And does she like, is she pushing this relationship because she wants a kid?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know because I don't know like really what their relationship is like. You know, I mean, I feel like we're going to see it play out and everything. But again, like, what does it matter?
And I feel like, what is Jax Taylor? Like, where's his place in telling Kristen you're not ready to have a kid? I feel like that would be received differently if it was like one of her best girlfriends.
Yeah.
Than like Jax. I'm not saying that her and Jax aren't friends. Obviously they are, but like, I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way.
I mean, I think that they're really good friends now after everything. I don't know. I feel like it's really difficult to be friends with someone that you've had sex with in the past.
Multiple times.
But, I mean, that's
and then, like, lied to your best friend about it. Yeah.
I mean, I guess, like, it can happen. Like, it's happened before.
I'll never forget the backhand.
Oh, my God.
The backhand slap. Yeah.
Dude, I wondered this for years. Years. I don't know if you know this, but there was something that was said. Kristen said, I remember hearing this on, I think Stassi was on Call Her Daddy, maybe? Or, no, I think it was just her podcast. She said this. So she said that Kristen said something to her that they edited out, and that's why Stassi backhanded her. It was so despicable and so disgusting that they wouldn't air it. And Stassi was like, I'm not going to tell you what she said.
What did she say, Stassi? We want to know.
I want to know too. Like, what was said? Because
that was a powerful backhand. That's why
that's what I'm saying. Was like, I understand being like frustrated in that moment and like all of this stuff, but I was like, but there was something behind that backhand. It was deep. It was like, something triggered it, and something triggered it.
Yeah. Stassi, if you want to come on the podcast and let us know.
Listen, Linda. Tell me. Tell me, because I want to know. They know how to make some good TV, and I thought it's very interesting. You know how we talk about like Jax, Kristen, Brittany, and the other people? The other people actually have really good storylines. I actually like that. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this plays out, especially that couple that's having issues.
Right, they're separated now. Jason, they just came out and said that they're separated.
Well, he made, I think so. He made a really disturbing comment to Lala. Was pretty much like calling her his mistress or something, and like Lala was just like, been there before, don't like that. And he, what did he say? Called her like side piece or something. Like, I don't know. It was something like it didn't sit well, and
just kind of slimy.
Like, it was just like, and like you say that in front of your wife too, like even in a joking manner, but like you're in the middle of a fight. Like that's not a really appropriate time to be making jokes like that when you're in a fight with your spouse. No, you should be walking on eggshells, but
correct.
Josh was watching, he watched Vanderpump in the Valley with me and watched What Happens Live. And
Yeah.
Lucas Gage was on Watch What Happens Live, which
He
was
was,
so
yeah.
good. Yeah. So I love how he talked about his marriage to Chris Appleton and said, like, it was a manic episode for 6 months.
Yeah.
Anyways, Josh was watching The Valley with me, and when that dude, Jax, pants that guy, and then his wife went and, like, cried and everything, like, Josh was just kind of like, why is she crying? And I'm like, she has postpartum depression, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Before she even said that, I was like, this is postpartum tears. I was like,
she's like sobbing.
Yeah. And everybody was just like, we didn't even see his wiener. It's fine. They were like, I didn't see anything. Did you see anything? And they were like, no, I didn't see anything. And she was just like, and I was like, that is postpartum depression right there.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it looks like. Crying over something so minute, but like, and like uncontrollably.
Yeah. And it feels so big. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then Jack's coming in there and being like, I'm sorry. He's like, please don't cry. I love how he says that to everyone. He's just like, please don't cry.
Please don't cry.
Over something that I did.
Yeah.
Don't make me feel like shit. Anyways, Jax, be a big boy and stop.
And sometimes you do commit some cryable offenses. So
yeah, like let her have her moment.
Yeah.
So I think the last thing that we should cover really quick is Rachel thinking that she'd be spilling some tea. My personal opinion, I've been hearing a lot of different sides of this. So Rachel comes out and says all the people on her podcast, all the people that knew about the affair, or supposedly knew about the affair, because a lot of them, she was just like, I just assumed that they knew because of X, Y, and Z factors. And she says that one of the people that knew was Logan, which is Ariana's best friend, and said that he walked in on Rachel and Tom cuddling. So that's Ariana's best friend. So of course he went and told Ariana. So she was like, I assumed that Ariana knew. And so it's like, it conflicts. We talked about this yesterday. It conflicts with the lawsuit of like, Ariana knew about the affair, but wanted to save it for a storyline for season 11. You know, like, did she know or did she not know? Because your lawsuit said that she knew for sure. And then now on your podcast, you're saying she might have known.
You assumed that she knew.
It's like, I mean, I'm not good with like legal verbiage or anything, but I feel like assumptions and actually knowing are two completely different things. And you can't sue someone over an assumption.
Right. And then this is the first time that she's even saying all of it. Like, saying this like for the lawsuit and her podcast. If she knew or you thought that she knew, you would have said that when this all happened freaking a year ago. Like, you would have been on the reunion saying, Ariana, I thought you knew. But she didn't say that because this is all of a sudden coming out.
That's why I think it's all BS. And I'm back to being like, Rachel, what the fuck are you doing? Like, I feel like she was on a good path of trying to redeem herself. And now I'm just like, you're kind of doubling back. And again, you're making yourself look untrustworthy. You know, I think that she was doing a good job of like building some trust back with people. And now I'm just like, you're losing credibility again.
And I feel like it's all surrounding the lawsuit. Like, this lawsuit has come out and now stories are changing and things are changing.
Yeah. But one person she said that probably knew, was Max Boyens, which Max was on season 9. 8?
Yeah. Briefly. Yeah.
Yeah. We been knew.
Yeah.
That he was a piece of shit. So.
And I don't, again, okay. Like, we're a year down the line. Okay. I don't know. I just don't feel, I feel like it's one of those efforts of like, well, I'm going to take everybody down with me if I'm going to go down. And it's like, you cannot blame anybody else for your actions. You can't. So just own your actions, speak for yourself, and let that be that,
Yeah. It's like, who the fuck cares? Who knew? You knew. And you were betraying your friend. And I do think that it was a manipulation tactic because she was like, oh, well, he could tell people and he had all these people and he took me to these events and all of this stuff. So, like, he could tell the world about this, but I couldn't tell anyone that this was going on. And that is, like, manipulation.
That's isolating.
We're going to talk about this, too. It's isolating and it's a manipulation tactic for sure. But on the other hand...
But then just talk about that. Talk about that.
Don't go and like name all these people that supposedly knew. I don't know what the tactic was on that.
Yeah.
But for me personally, it just kind of makes her look even worse.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So now we are going to get into talking about the new documentary, Quiet on Set. And this first part, we're going to talk about Dan Schneider and kind of his treatment of people in the workplace. And then later on, we're going to talk about the sexual abuse. So we will put a trigger warning and a timestamp before we start talking about the sexual abuse.
I just felt like that we needed to talk about this just because as pop culture podcast and mental health podcast and 90s babies who grew up with this.
Yeah.
It just made sense.
Like, these shows shaped my childhood, you know? All that. The Amanda Show, Drake and Josh, Victorious, iCarly. Didn't really watch Sam and Cat. I was kind of like...
I was aged out at that point.
Yeah, I was aged out. I was pushing being aged out with Victorious. And also to kind of talk about like the media treatment of some of these actors. They talked really badly about Victoria Justice, and I kind of like fed into those headlines. So I was just kind of like, I don't really like want to be a part of it. Like watching this, if she is as bad of a person as all these people are saying, but come to find out, it's just she didn't feed into Dan's BS. So they kind of pushed her out of the show and also made some really bad headlines about her.
Right. They went in on the episode to kind of the background of Dan, kind of like his family life and kind of how he grew up, and he found his way to being this creative juggernaut behind these shows that made Nickelodeon a big kids network. It's kind of weird, like, we were watching it as kids. Obviously, we don't know the impact that has on, like, pop culture, but I think that was the first really big kids network representation, I think, was Nickelodeon. But also, they talked about this in the documentary, all that was the first kind of, like, SNL for kids, you know, sketch comedy for kids.
Yeah. And it was so much fun to watch these shows. And it sounds like all these kids had fun doing those things too.
Yeah.
The sketch comedy part. Like they've talked about, you know, with Dan, it was at first, it was a really fun, exciting environment. And then it slowly became like a living nightmare. And he used to be this fun, super fun, joking around person. And then what it sounds like is he got caught and then he started treating people like shit.
He almost like went on a power trip, it sounded like, you know, like at some point it went to his head of, I'm in control of all these people's career, so I can do whatever, say whatever I want.
Yeah. I mean, I watched a video the other day and it was on the iCarly set. And everybody kind of looked really miserable. It was super late. And the dude that played Spencer,
Yes.
that car,
Jerry. Yeah.
Dan was filming them, which we see this all the time. Like, Dan would walk around and, like, film people on
Yeah.
sets.
A lot.
And
There's a lot of footage of that.
yeah, in this, like, he was pretty much just talking shit to them, but trying to make it in a joking manner. And then Jerry was just kind of like, let us go home, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as he said that, you hear it in Dan's voice.
It
completely
changes.
switches up,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just like, tries to embarrass him. And it was just like, well, we would be going home right now if you had gotten your lines right earlier in the day. And like, that was kind of like the toxic work environment that he started to create. Like, instead of this super fun, exciting environment, he would try to embarrass you and make you feel like shit. We also see that in the writer's room as well.
Yeah.
So there was 2 women that were in the documentary, and they were the first 2 women that was hired on to the Amanda show. So they talked about how they got hired on, and when they got hired on, they were told that their salaries were going to be split. So they were like, we're getting 2 writers for the price of 1. And they were like, well, like, this is my dream job. Obviously, I'm going to not turn this down, so I'm going to take it. And later on, they find out that it's illegal for them to split salaries, because they didn't know that at first. And so they presented that to the Writers Guild and said, well, our salaries are being split. And the guild came back and was like, oh, heck no. And so Dan got a call. I wonder how that conversation went. But then he called one of the writers and was just like, are you conspiring against me? If I find out that you went and told these people this, then you're never going to work again. I will make your life hell. Just pretty much threatened her. All because he got caught that he was being shitty.
And even until then, when they're working on writing for these shows, they're in this writer's room hearing Dan, because I remember one of the writers said that her first clue that this was all going to go awry was him saying, well, I don't think that women can be good, funny writers. And that set the tone for the rest of their experience with him, because they would describe being in the writer's room and him making them do dehumanizing things, just the women, making comments that he disguised as jokes but were actually like insults and degrading. You remember they were talking about he would send them messages during work to shout out degrading things just because he thought it was funny, like just these behaviors, and they're getting half of a salary. Not to say that any of that's okay no matter what salary you're getting, but on top of it, you're not getting paid shit.
No, multiple times would make dirty jokes too, and kind of set the precedent of that. And then those dirty jokes would get put into the shows. Like, for example, one of Amanda's characters on the show was Penelope Taint. And so when Nickelodeon came in and was just like, hey, is taint like this dirty thing? And he was like, no, it's like tainted. He got away with stuff like that all the time. And there were so many kids that talked about that. Like Leon Frierson talked about being put in leotards all the time. And then the big nose character or whatever, and he had noses all over him that looked very phallic. And they really did. I was just like, what? And then he had to sneeze. When he sneezed, the snot
shot out
all over this girl's face.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like those things happened all the time.
They would talk about the adult writers saying as jokes, like, oh, this is what this looks like, and it's funny, but you're having kids do this for kids.
Yeah. Like, it's not appropriate. And, Dan would also, like, show porn in the office. You're on the set of a kid's show. Even if it's, like, a joke, why are you showing porn?
Right.
Like it's a professional work environment.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a joke. That's not
Right.
something that you do in an office. Like that's not okay. The one female writer that he had telling a story about high school, he said like, "Oh, you know, it would be really funny is if you told the story again and you bent over the desk and acted like you were being sodomized." And he pressured her into doing that.
Yeah.
Like she wasn't comfortable doing it, but he continued to like push and push and push. And it was kind of like painted as like, if you don't feed into these jokes, then we're going to slowly start pushing you out.
Mm-hmm. And he would also say things like, you should give me a massage. I'll put your sketch in if you give me a massage.
Yeah.
And like, the thing about it is like, these are comedy shows. So everything is being disguised as jokes. But he wasn't joking because there was always women on set massaging him.
Mm-hmm.
And also, that's not funny. Like, you might be on a comedy set and there might be like a casualty to it, but that doesn't mean you get to disrespect women or people that you work with. Not even to brush on the racism factor that came in too.
What was his name? Brian?
Uh-huh.
That played Lil Fetus. I don't know if anyone remembers Lil Fetus, but that
Yeah.
was like, I just remember as a kid cracking up at.
Thinking it was so funny.
Yeah, it was so funny. But he says like he was like very uncomfortable because they put him in a leotard.
Mhm.
And then someone made a comment that like the leotard should be charcoal.
Yeah, because he is a man of color.
Yeah. And it's just like, and he was so hurt by that comment. And I think one of the makeup artists or whatever was just like, ignore that comment. Like, don't worry about what the fuck that person just said. And his mom was very vocal. So he was like, I can't tell my mom this because she is already vocal about everything. And she's kind of the one speaking out against all of this stuff. At one point, there was one season he didn't get asked to come back. And he was kind of like, I think that was due to my mom because my mom was so outspoken. She would always complain about these things. And I think that's the biggest reason why I didn't get asked back. And he was hurt because he was like 13, 14 years old. And he was like, I've built these relationships with these people. I didn't even get to say goodbye.
Yeah.
I lost my job because of my mom.
Yeah.
So he held that resentment towards her. And she was in the documentary as well. And oh God, it was so heartbreaking seeing her breakdown saying like this ruined our relationship. Like there was a lot of things like moments that we couldn't get back because he blamed me for it.
As a parent, she was doing the thing that protected her kid. But as a kid, you don't see that. You see mom has taken away this immediate thing that I love. Mom was protecting him. And even on the documentary, she said like, I was getting him out of a house of horrors. It is so damaging to work in an environment like that as an adult.
Yeah.
But as a child, you know, I know that we've talked about before how important your brain development is at those ages, and you're learning about the world and you're learning about yourself, and especially in those like early puberty years, you're learning who you are. You're learning how to set boundaries for yourself. You're learning how to be independent. You're learning so much, and being in that environment, it's so traumatic for you for the rest of your life.
Hello, Binks has some thoughts to say. But like that taught him essentially that is what these white producers and people in power treat, like how they treat people of color on sets. Like it taught him that from a very young age. And he said that he's had to like go through a lot of therapy to work through those. And then also his mom said that it was pretty much taught to her on these sets that these things were normal. So like them going long hours, you know, and saying like, oh, well, we need to stay to do this. Like, is that okay? And then like Brian said that he would like, you know, joke and be like, oh, so we're ignoring child labor laws again? Okay, cool. And then they just like keep rolling and doing that. And like it taught not only him that was normal for a kid to do that, but it taught his mom that was normal on these sets. So all of these things became normalized for the parents and the kids.
Right. Because these parents, they don't, 9 out of 10 times, they're not in the entertainment industry. They don't know. Like, their kid was funny. You know, Amanda Bynes, they put her in a freaking, like a comedy club at 10 years old, and she's discovered by Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
Just because that's what she liked to do. So, like,
yeah.
It's the world is new to them, too.
I want to talk about the on-air dares. Because I remember those and being like, oh my God, these are horrible. Like,
yeah, I would be scared to death to do this. Yeah.
And so, like, there was one Brian talked about being covered in peanut butter and then having dogs come in and lick the peanut butter off of him. And he was like, this, like, looking back at it now, he was like, is this someone's, like, sick, awkward fantasy? You know, it was really gross. And he was not comfortable. And, like, the whole time, like, you see it because they play that episode and he's just like, I don't like this. I don't like this. And it was pretty much ingrained in them. Like, you have to do what you're told. You can't have an opinion. You can't say you don't like this, or you will not be asked to come back because you're not fun. You're
being difficult to work with. Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to be covered in peanut butter or have a scorpion put down his throat. Like, like there were so many things. And he said this too. He was like, we were essentially being tortured, and people were like, oh, well, you got your money. And he was like, yeah, but at what cost?
And it's not as much, I think we were talking about this earlier, and we'll go into this kind of, I guess later on we talk about Drake, but you don't make as much money as you think you do. You know, like, Drake talked about this, they don't get residuals, so they get their money for that week, and then they're paying this percentage in taxes, and this percentage to their agents, this percentage to managers, and like, yeah, it's not a bad paycheck for a 12-year-old, but like, it's not like they're being paid $1 million a week and they're keeping all of it, you know?
One of the writers was fired, like 3 days, I think, before the end of season 1 of the Amanda show.
Yeah.
And then for season 2, the other woman writer that was there, she was the only woman. And Dan was just like, so we're going to pay you for 16 weeks, but this is like a 27-week season. So the last 11 weeks, you're going to be working for free. And she was like, okay. But they had hired a male writer to come in with no credits, had never worked before, full salary
for the whole duration
season.
of the season. Yeah.
And she was just kind of like, okay, well, that doesn't seem fair. And then they had a meeting with all the male writers. And then she was asked to come in later. And so she came in, and all these guys were sitting around, and Dan was just like, okay, pitch your idea. And she pitched her idea, and he was just kind of like, didn't you used to do phone sex? And she was like, no. And he was just like, yeah, I remember you saying that you used to do phone sex. And it was just kind of like this huge joking matter of trying to, didn't even acknowledge her idea, and just like started trying to degrade her right there. And she was like, I quit. She was like, I'm not going to be the only female for the rest of this season.
And to get to the end of all of that, and to have the comment from Nickelodeon or Dan Schneider or whoever the hell put it out and say, Dan Schneider denied ever having any knowledge of any salaries. Yes, you did. Yes, you did. You're the creator of the shows. You have knowledge of the salaries.
You knew. She sued for harassment, gender discrimination, and a hostile work environment. And they settled, and it pretty much ended her career.
Yep.
No one would hire her.
Yeah, she's blacklisted, which is what happens when, unfortunately, when you're deemed difficult to work with, quote unquote.
Or if you're going to report that these things were happening, they don't want you there.
Yeah, we're going to punish you for reporting it. Yeah. we're going to set up the Writers Guild and we're going to set up these things that are put in place to protect you, but don't use those things because if you do, you'll never work again.
When he hired her, he made the comment of like he had.
It's also very strange to me that he said that, but then he really honed in on Amanda Bynes. It was very funny.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just like, what?
Yeah.
So when they discovered Amanda Bynes,
they blew up.
Yeah.
She blew them up. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like, that was when, like, she got on all that, and then they did the Amanda show, and I mean, her career took off very quickly, and she was like 10 years old when she joined all that. She was so funny. I had never seen those like clips of her at the Laugh Factory. She's hilarious,
and she's a natural. Like, it just comes so naturally to her. Yeah.
And so he honed in on that, you know, and the Amanda show was his first creator credit. So he was like a producer or something on all that. But he didn't get his first creator credit until the Amanda show.
Yeah.
Everyone talks about that they noticed his relationship with Amanda, of like, they would be in class because they had to do school on sets. And so they would be in class and like Amanda wouldn't be there. She would be with Dan, pitching ideas, doing different things. People talked about how uncomfortable they were to witness the physical closeness of them. Like, he was constantly like touching her. She was, you know, there was times like people would walk up and they would see her behind him, like hugging him. Just really uncomfortable things, which, I mean, we can kind of get into this more in like when we talk about more of the abuse side of it. But he just created that kind of environment. When Amanda was about like 16 years old, this was after the Amanda show, and he switched over and was working with the Friends creator on a show, What I Like About You. Which that was such a banger, like, opening
it was so good
song.
Yeah,
oh, it was so good. I loved that show. She was like 16 at the time, and she started wanting to do what she wanted to do. So she tried to get emancipated. She ran away, and Dan was kind of the person to come in and be like, hey, let's do all this stuff to like move this forward. And that was very manipulative because he was trying to, in a way, like push her away from her parents. And it worked for a little bit. But then in the end, like, that ruined their relationship all around. And he was asked to be removed from What I Like About You. And I love the little verbiage at the end that was just like, Dan says that, actually, I just decided to leave on my own accord. I wasn't fired.
Of course you did. He puts all this in the documentary, and then this past week after it all drops, he comes out with a fake ass apology. I would like to hear from Amanda Bynes, but
yeah, I would too.
I don't know that she is ever going to be in a space to talk about it.
No. I mean, he created such a toxic, hostile work environment. Like, people would say, like, he would come in on set and he was like a tornado, and he would just scream and scream and scream, and then would leave, and everyone would just be standing there like, why did he just scream for 2 minutes and then just like walk off set?
Right.
Like, what is going on? He would overwork them, underpay them. There's so many times, and we saw this with Mark Schwann too, with One Tree Hill. He would write these characters in the show and kind of like paint himself as like a god. And they even said this, like, it was literally one comment that was made was like, Dan is a god.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like,
and kids are saying that.
Yeah. One of the women, she was an editor. She said that she would work from 8 a.m. to midnight almost every day. But Dan wouldn't directly talk to her. So he would talk to a male being in the same room and be like, hey, tell her to trim this. Hey, tell her to do this. Hey, tell her to do this. She could hear him, but he wouldn't talk directly to her.
Dehumanizing. Yeah.
And then she had some kind of like health crisis or whatever, and they had to call an ambulance and get her out of there. And while she was being wheeled out of there, someone made a comment. I'm assuming Dan made a comment of like, how is the show going to get finished?
Yeah.
And she was like, I'll be right back, you know? And that kind of shows that, like, what she was doing was so important and so vital to getting the show out there. But she was not valued or respected in this at the same time, because she's getting wheeled out in an ambulance. Who gives a fuck about the show right now? Someone could have died.
Yeah.
And you created an environment that was overworking, and she's having to go to the hospital because of this. Who cares about this show right now? Shouldn't someone's health take precedence over that? But then on the same hand, like, you can't even speak directly to her, but she is so vital to the show. Yeah, it's bullshit.
It's like every worst trait of a boss that you could have rolled into one person.
Yeah. Binks, what do you have to say about Dan Schneider? You watched the doc with me.
We don't like him, do we, Binks?
No, Binks had his words.
His apology was shit. His apology was shit. It was, first of all, nobody should have ever given him a platform to talk this soon after. Like, you're taking space.
I heard the person that interviewed him is a person that is on one of his shows right now.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you're in a toxic, abusive relationship with your boss, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah. And he's like paying you. He signs off on your paychecks. So of course you're going to do this.
Yeah. And you're just taking space away from all of the kids that just 2 seconds ago, like, this documentary just came out. Maybe, like, pipe down and shut the hell up and listen to what you've done before coming on there and saying, I apologize for my actions. Okay, well, when they asked you about it, you were denying everything. So,
yeah. I mean, Jeanette McCurdy talks about this in her book of, like, the toxic work environment. She doesn't name Dan, but, like, we know that it's Dan.
Yeah.
And talks about how verbally abusive he was. You know, he would invite her into his office, just her, when she was like 14, 15 years old. Why are you inviting a child into your office to talk one-on-one? A parent should be present. That's not okay for a grown man to be sitting there with a child talking business. Like,
which we see, and we'll talk about that more in the next, like, section, but we see that a lot of, like, okay, parents, can you leave the room?
Yeah.
No, they're babies. What do you mean? Why are parents should always be there? Adults, trusted adults should always be there. And the reason I'm saying parents so much is because, as we're going to learn, not everybody on that set was trusted adults. Yeah.
Yeah. Alexa Nichols also talks about the toxic work environment. So she left Zoe 101 after, I think, season 2, I believe, because it was so toxic and so horrible and so degrading. And, like, all these comments were made, like, people's comments were made. You know, Katrina Johnson, going back to all that, she was told that she was getting fat at one point because she was, like, a young girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were like, you can't be the fat one. And so then she hit puberty and she turned into a woman, and they were like, you look a little too old. So
and then they
slowly pushed her out. And kind of similar things were happening with Alexa Nichols of like talking down to her, degrading her, like, this is Jamie's show. This isn't your show. And you know, whenever her and Jamie would have any kind of issues, because, I mean, they were 12 and 13 years old, like, of course, they're going to have some kind of issue, like, they're kids.
Right. This is their high school.
Yeah, they would always take Jamie's side and always be mean and degrading towards Alexa. So she was like, yeah, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I actually saw a video last night of Alexa talking to TMZ.
Was she like
so funny?
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, and they were asking her about, like, what do you think about Jamie Lynn's pregnancy and everything? And she was just, she was like, I think she should make better choices in the future.
I remember that. Yeah,
I was like, girl,
she did not care when she left Nickelodeon. She was like, she left guns blazing. Yeah,
and good for her. Good for her talking about all of this stuff. And she has been very vocal about Dan Schneider being an abusive, toxic person.
Yeah.
And she didn't feel safe on set with him. She's done so many interviews. She has her own podcast. It's called Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
Very good. So, and she actually covers Quiet on Set too. And she's in Quiet on Set, but she also like covers the kind of like aftermath of it all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's what we were working with Nickelodeon, and it's very disillusioning. Like,
yeah,
I don't even feel comfortable watching those shows now and thinking like they're getting money off of this. That makes me uncomfortable. Because I do not think that any person in power who abuses it like that should ever get rewarded. And that's just all Hollywood seems to do.
They profit off of people's misery.
And in this case, like, kids.
All right. So this is the trigger warning. We are going to start going into the sexual abuse that was happening on these sets. So if you don't feel comfortable listening to this, turn it off now. Skip to the end. We'll have a timestamp to when we go to our intentions at the end. So let's talk about Jason Handy first.
Okay.
Do you want to talk about Brandy's mom?
I don't even really remember Brandy that much, if I'm being honest, I guess because of this whole thing. Well, okay, so Jason Handy was a guy, I don't even know what his official title was, but he was somebody who kind of...
production assistant. So he was
That's right. He was a PA. So he kind of, and they described him as somebody who kind of walks the kids around, right? Like, make sure that the kids are where they're supposed to be. Takes the kids from one place to another because the kids are always supposed to be supervised. That meant that he got some one-on-one time with kids. One of the kids is not on the documentary, but her mom is on the documentary. And her name was Brandy. Had been having extracurricular communication with Jason Handy.
It was presented like, oh, he's our friend.
Right.
We're going to email with him.
Mom found content of him masturbating in an email to Brandy saying, I just want you to know that this is what you do to me. Brandy's a child. I just get so infuriated with this. Mom says she doesn't really know if she should call the police or not. She goes back and forth, doesn't want the police to think that she's a bad mom for letting them email in the first place, so decides not to call the police. To which Jason Handy continues his abuse with other girls, and it is discovered that he has abused multiple girls as young as 9 years old. Actually, as young as 7, I think.
Yeah. So when everything came out and law enforcement searched his home, they found all kinds of stuff. And one of the things that they found was Ziploc bags, connected to different children. And one of them was a pair of a 7-year-old girl's underwear.
And they were all labeled. They also found a journal of him writing his feelings towards these kids. And in the journal, he says, I'm a full-blown pedophile.
Yeah.
And that he does not know how he goes on set, basically, and resists the urge to rape kids.
Yeah. And he even said in the journal, like, he was like, I quoted it, it was like, he's been giving into sexual impulses with little girls, and he said, I'm willing to find someone to rape if I have to. Which is, I can't even.
And I think Jason Handy's the problem, but I also see, like, I'm not a person who just jumps on, like, parents should do better train immediately, because sometimes, and we'll see with Drake's dad, I think that he tried so hard.
Yeah.
But this mom, to have this evidence and to say, I don't know if I should call the police or not, that's a really poor ass judgment call.
And I think because we don't know if Brandy was one of the first victims or not.
Yeah.
But it could have saved multiple other girls from this trauma. I think as a parent, if you see a grown man emailing with your child, that's a red flag. Because why does a grown ass man that is 28 years old want to be friends with a fucking 12-year-old girl? Like, that's not normal.
No, and they said that there was a 9-year-old girl. They did not name her, obviously, but that he went to her house and was playing video games in her room with her. That doesn't make sense.
No.
Parents, adults around these situations, ask questions, please. Like, I'm begging you. If you see something, say something, because, like, Brandy's mom is a classic example of, like, seeing something, saying nothing, and it possibly happening more to more kids.
And someone made the comment, too, of, like, why didn't she go to the police, and why didn't she do X, Y, and Z, and all of this stuff? And someone was, like, pointed out, well, she says it right there. She says, at the beginning, I wanted to be an actor. I never got the opportunity. And this is why I feel like this is why we don't see Brandy on this documentary. It's probably because it's so traumatic. She doesn't want to talk about it, number one.
Right.
But you have the mom talking about it. It seems very, I think it's a lot of, like, performative too. Because, I mean, we talked about this too. Like, if we found that on our child's computer, we would go Stassi Schroeder and go in depth about what we would do to that person.
Yeah. My first thought is probably, what's the worst thing that can happen, because it's about to happen to you. Because, like, the police can go ahead and meet me at your house. We can all meet there. Let's all have a conversation about it. Because it's disgusting and it's not okay. And saying nothing can be just as damaging as doing it. Am I saying that it's her fault? No, I think that there's only one person at fault for that.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's kind of like this, evil are the people who stay silent too, you know?
I want to talk about what was found in his home. First of all, not only the Ziploc bags, but I wrote down, so there was tons of video files of minors. There was, the Ziploc bag shrines. Child porn was found, and then 10,000 images of child porn.
Yeah.
There was a lot more, like, in-depth things and in the court case. Absolutely disgusting. And multiple pedophiles were hired onto these sets to work with children. And still to this day
are working
on sets with kids. So let's go into Brian Peck.
Yeah.
So Brian Peck, I don't know if you remember on, was it All That or the Amanda Show that he was Pickle Boy?
All That, maybe?
Yeah. So he was Pickle Boy. So he walked around with pickles. Already, like, it's kind of fucking weird because pickle is very phallic
suggestive
reference. And, yeah. There's a lot of, like, sexual references that he makes and everything. He gets really close with all the kids, and then they have a party at his house. And at his house, he has, like, all these old Hollywood things around his house. And then he also has a picture of a clown holding balloons. It turns out that this is an image of John Wayne Gacy, and he is pen pals with John Wayne Gacy. When I tell you, my jaw hit the fucking floor.
Oh, I was shocked. And and John Wayne Gacy signed this picture, your friend, John Wayne Gacy.
Like, had letters that him and John Wayne have written back and forth to each other, all of these things. And I think it's really ironic that this is a pedophile killer of little boys. And then Brian Peck goes on to do what he does to Drake Bell. Kyle Sullivan, he said, he's one of the actors. He was presented with this, and he said, Your first instinct is to give someone the benefit of the doubt if you've known them for so long, even if you're presented with a really bad sign.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone was like, this is weird. This is really weird. But, like, he's a good guy.
But
so,
it's
like,
Brian.
Yeah. So
everybody trusts Brian.
Yeah, everybody trusts Brian. This is what they said about Brian. He was charming, funny. Everybody loved him. He got along with everyone, and he was one of the most trusted people on set.
Mm-hmm.
They're at a table read. Everyone's at a table read. And then they ask the parents to leave the set of all that.
And I 100% believe so that if a child said something happened to them, they could squash it.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents not know. But anyways, continue. Sorry.
No, you're good. Like, they ask everybody to leave. And when they leave, they announce that Brian Peck had been arrested for sexually abusing a child. And there were so many things in the court case of what he did to this child. And the documentary, like, cuts to different people of, like, who this happened to, when it happened, like, what?
We don't
We're
know.
all confused. Yeah. And Virgil, which is one of the, like, producers on the set, like, he was just kind of like, it was someone on one of our shows, and they were like, yeah. And he was like, what? Who? And, like, it had never been disclosed who this person was. And then Drake Bell walks out and sits down.
And your heart sinks to your stomach.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about that moment. I don't know if it's the way that Drake looks, because he just looks like he's about to go in for battle. Mm. It's one of the most painful moments of that documentary, I think, when he first walks out and sits down.
Yeah. Literally, like, chills, tears, everything. And so Drake starts talking about, like, his past and, like, how he grew up acting, you know, and then was on the Amanda Show by 1999. Because Dan found Brian Peck joined, I think, like, the second season is what they said.
Mm-hmm.
Talked to Drake about, like, old Hollywood, the history of Hollywood, which Drake was really interested in. Mm-hmm. And Drake even says this now. He thinks it's, like, calculated interest. Like, like, it was a very calculated move to be like, oh, hey, like, I'm one of the only people that knows all of this stuff, so come to me, talk to me. Mm-hmm. And then, like, slowly became an acting coach for Drake. And then Drake's dad caught on to Brian being a little too, like, always hanging around Drake, and always touching him. Like, unnecessarily touching him and putting his arm around him and all of this stuff. And so when Drake's dad was like, I don't really trust this guy, like, I'm getting some bad vibes from him, people were just like, well, he's gay, so you're probably just homophobic.
Wow, what a reach. Yeah.
No, there's a grown man touching my son.
Who's a whole 12 years old. Yeah.
Like, I think that's different.
Right.
Brian, like, threw him a birthday party at his house. Like, he would have all of these different things for Drake. He would, like, follow him around to different concerts that Drake would put on. Like, he would always be there. And Drake's dad was just like, this is not good. Drake's dad would try to kind of, like, keep him away from Brian, and Brian picked up on that. So due to kind of, like, the tumultuous relationship that Drake's dad and mom had, Brian was like, oh, this is an easy way to get in. 100% picked up on that and was just like, okay, I'm going to turn Drake's mom against his dad, and I'm going to turn Drake against his dad. So pretty much was, like, feeding Drake, like, your dad's bad for your career. He talks too much. He says this.
He's stealing your money.
He's stealing your money. So then there's, like, this whole big, like, lawsuit that comes up of, like, Drake's dad potentially stealing his money. And essentially Drake starts living with his mom. But his mom doesn't really do the same things that his dad did. So his dad would always drop him to auditions, drop him to set, all of these things. And his mom didn't do that. So Brian stepped up and did it and took the role of his dad. And in this, Drake's dad would tell his mom, like, don't ever leave Drake alone with Brian. And then ended up Drake spending the night at Brian's house. And Drake said he woke up one night and he was being sexually assaulted. And he said, I knew my life was never going to be the same after this. So that's when the sexual abuse started. And it was really, yeah. It's going to make me really upset to even like listen and to hear about it. It was so bad.
And I think misconception of like this was a one-time thing, and Drake is very clear on it was not a one-time thing. And when they didn't really ask him, you see Drake get so uncomfortable and so lost in the trauma of it, I think, when he's talking about it.
He's like shifting in his seat.
He's like, shifting and he's not looking at the camera, he's looking away. And I think it was just so hard to watch all of it, but hearing him say, I don't know how to describe this on camera, and then saying, pretty much picture the worst thing that somebody could do as a sexual assault, and that's the answer of what happened. I read the list of charges that Brian Peck was charged with, and I mean, forcible sexual contact with anesthesia. So he's knocked Drake out, is what I'm hearing. Use of a foreign object. I mean, just to like, not to be crude about it, but just like to say like, this was not he touched Drake's shoulder a little bit too long. You know? This was severe sexual abuse.
Yeah.
For months.
Yeah. Drake got a girlfriend during this time. And when he got this girlfriend, he started spending a lot of time with her, and he was over at her house. Brian had invited him to go to Disneyland. And Drake was like at his girlfriend's house. So Brian started calling his phone over and over and over, and then started calling the girlfriend's house over and over and over. And finally his girlfriend's mom answers the phone and like hands it to Drake, and Drake's just like, yeah, I'm not coming. I'm at my girlfriend's house, blah, blah, blah. Hangs up. Brian calls over and over and over and over. And his girlfriend's mom pulls him into the kitchen and is just like, hey, what's going on? And he kind of was just like, oh, things are just weird. Like, it's a little weird, but it's fine. It's fine. And she was like,
a 47-year-old man.
A 47-year-old man does not call my daughter's boyfriend like this. Like, it's not normal. So then they put him in therapy, and he says that he doesn't really talk to the therapist about it.
I mean, here's the thing: is I hear people all the time say, "Well, you really should. If something's wrong, like the kid should tell somebody." You know, that's not how. First of all, it's not how trauma works. But also, this is a person who, one, is a big part of your career and something that you're doing and can make all that go away. Yeah. But two, Brian Peck groomed Drake.
Yeah.
From the beginning. He groomed him. And that's a lot of confusing feelings. That's like, this person is hurting me, but this person's not a bad person. This is my friend. This is someone that I trust. So it's a very like mix of different things as a kid to go through that.
Yeah. Like, this person would never intentionally hurt me because he's not a bad person. And then one day he was on the phone with his mom, and he just like snapped, and he just started screaming everything that was happening into the phone. And so that was when they started investigating Brian, and they got a full confession from him, and then the letters of support for Brian. 41 people that work in Hollywood wrote letters in support of Brian, saying that he was not a bad person, and that if this did happen, then it was the 14-year-old boy's fault for seducing him.
Yeah. And that he eventually had to cave.
Yeah. I mean, it was Will Friedle and Ryder Strong from Boy Meets World.
Mm-hmm.
James Marsden, which hurt so bad to hear that name. There was a couple of other people, like actors. There was some producers.
Tom DeSantos, I think, was one as well.
Tom DeSantos, yes. And all these people have come out and like talked about it too recently because they know their name is within the documentary and have like the courts have unsealed the documents that have showed the letters. Instead of reaching out to Drake and being like, "Hey, I'm so sorry about this," they're still defending what they did. Like, Ryder Strong and Will Friedle are still defending what they said.
And here's the thing too that I didn't know up until I listened to a podcast with Drake on it this morning, and she talked to him about, like, they came out and apologized, in quotes. What is your take on that? First of all, Drake's just kind of like, he doesn't say this. He says it in a lot nicer way, but first of all, this is all bullshit. But also, they were in the courtroom. So Drake talks about this moment that he walks into the courtroom for Brian Peck's sentencing. So he's already confessed, been found guilty. For his sentencing, Drake goes into this courtroom. On Drake's side sits Drake, his mom, and his brother. Brian Peck's side is absolutely full of supporters. And Will Friedle and Ryder Strong were there. So they know that this person is Drake. Even though the rest of the world did not know because it was a John Doe, they know that it's Drake Bell. And they go on, Will Friedle goes on to work with Drake in Spider-Man. Drake said that he did not process that Will Friedle was in the room at the time. Will Friedle treats him like a friend.
Yeah.
And Drake says he looks back on that now and he's like, I thought these people that I worked with were my friends.
Yeah.
And they supported this person who did horrible things to me.
And like reading the letters too, and then like hearing on the podcast of like, okay, the letters are one thing, which is complete and total bullshit, but also in a way, like they were also kids, Will and Ryder themselves. So like maybe they
were 24 and 27.
Oh.
Yeah, no. Because he said today on that podcast, he said, you would think that the way that they're talking about it, that they were like 15. And he said Will Friedle was 27 when he wrote that letter. And Ryder was 24.
Yeah. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Fuck that.
We have nothing to say at that point. And he said that they compared it to like them being 25 and dating a 30-year-old woman. And I'm like,
that.
Wow, if you really cannot see the difference, then
they still really don't see the difference. Get it. So
no,
but like because they went on their podcast just because they have a podcast now that just started, and hopefully it goes into the fucking trash because they started talking and like they still don't get it.
Still don't get it.
Still don't get it. But yeah, I think one of the most difficult parts was hearing also like Drake saying that he called his dad after the whole thing with Brian and was like, did you hear they got him? And his dad was just like, yeah, wow, I knew this was going to happen. I'm so glad that it didn't happen to you.
Oh.
And then it shows like, you know, Drake's dad, like, how did you feel like when you found out that it was him? And he just breaks down.
I mean, he says that moment has changed him forever.
Yeah. And oh my God, I'm going to get teary-eyed.
I mean, I cried a lot during his story, you know, and say what you will about Drake Bell. Drake Bell has made questionable choices in the past few years. Drake Bell has also said that he's had a lot of mental health crises in that amount of time because of this situation, because he was not dealing with it. So
yeah, I know it talks about the child endangerment charges, which what I remember from that was like I heard that he had a whole relationship with this like 15-year-old girl. That was what I remember reading.
The media said, yeah.
That's what the media said, but in reality, that's not what happened. What happened was there was a girl that was messaging him on Instagram and he was DMing her. She lied about her age. That was proven that she lied about her age.
Yeah.
She would show up at shows with him. He didn't even know that it was her. And when he did find out the truth about her age, he stopped all communication with her, and she was still showing up to these shows. And when it all came out, like, he was charged with child endangerment, and like all of this stuff was proven in court. Like, there's court cases about it, so people can go and get their facts right about what exactly happened, because people are still painting him as a pedophile.
Yeah. They're saying that he had to be register as a sex offender and everything, and that's not true.
That is not true, because that's not what happened, and they proved it all.
Yeah.
So, and I feel like in some ways that was very calculated. Like, my personal belief, and like this is completely just a conspiracy theory that I have made up in my own head, but my conspiracy is that someone close to Brian Pett fed this shit into the media to try to paint Drake as a pedophile. So that if it ever came out that Drake was the one that Brian Peck abused,
he would not be credible.
He would not be credible.
And here's the thing about it too. The mental damage it had to do to Drake to go through all of this, and then to be painted in the same way that someone had just done that to him. I can't imagine. And then we wonder why he had a substance abuse problem and why he went missing on a psychiatric emergency for days.
Yeah.
No fucking wonder.
I mean, he felt so alone. And he even said this, that the only person that knew it was him at the time was Dan Schneider. And so you see him really lean on Dan. And in that way, it's very manipulative too on Dan, of being like, oh, well, I'm going to be the one person that knows that this is happening. So I'm going to be the only person that you have in your life that knows about this, besides your mom and your family. And that's very isolating. And he did it on purpose. And you see that like at the Kids' Choice Awards back in 2014, when they were all up on stage presenting Dan with this big award. Very telling that Jeanette McCurdy was not there.
Yeah. It's a statement.
And you see him talk about Dan in such a high light because of this, like, essentially like trauma bonding.
So on the podcast I listened to this morning, they ask about, now that all this has come out, where do you stand with Dan? He still does not, he doesn't defend him. He says, I cannot speak for anybody else's experience. So I will not take away from that. With me, he was someone that I trusted. He does not come out and say, like, he recognizes that as manipulation, but I feel like that, like you said, is manipulation.
Jeanette McCurdy has fully talked about, like, her experience. So after her mom died, she was pretty much like, she went back on set like a week after she died. Because she felt like she had to. She felt like she would get fired if she didn't go back on set. But Ariana Grande was perfectly, they were writing her out of scenes. They were like filming Ariana on different dates because they were like, oh, Ariana has to do this for her music. She has to do this. And they were, and she was like, but when my mom died, you couldn't like write me out of scenes.
Right.
Like you couldn't film on a different day. But you can do this for Ariana.
Right.
Like it was very telling who the favorite was on that show. And like that's a thing with Dan. Like he has favorites on these shows.
He had a favorite before Amanda.
Yeah, Katrina Johnson.
Then she aged out.
She aged out and became the fat one at one point. He was just like, nope.
Yeah. So then he moved on to Amanda.
I can't imagine. So going back to that, like Katrina Johnson, like for them to say, hey, do you want the Katrina Johnson show? And then years after to be in college and hear, oh, have you seen this new show? It's called The Amanda Show.
Oh, I would have burned it down. I would have burned down the whole world. I would have been pissed.
Especially because she was the one that was like, hey, you guys need to go to the Laugh Factory and watch Amanda Bynes.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
God, I would be livid.
Yeah.
Livid. She said that she never watched it and she never will.
I don't blame her.
No,
Same.
I wouldn't either.
But I don't know. It dates all the way back to the 80s, at least, probably further but the 80s I think is when it started to get talked about. But kids are just not protected in a professional sense, in a monetary sense, in a physical, emotional sense. There is no protection for kids in Hollywood.
No, there's not. And I mean, they, like Honey Boo Boo just talked about that. Like she had a Coogan account, but her mom still spent all of her fucking money.
Spent all of her money, yeah.
And like I just watched that like fight play out of like of
I've
her talking about that. Of like Lana being like, Mom, like where you bought the house with this money, right. And then when you sold the house, you still didn't give me any money. Yeah. You took it all, and then you've spent it all, and we have no money. She was like, I'm never going to see that money again.
And now she's trying to go to college, and she doesn't have the money to do that she could have had from her Coogan account.
Parents exploiting their kids. We talked about that last week with like the Lohans. You know, exploiting their kid and exploiting their family and everything. And instead of looking out for the interest of their kids, they're looking out for themselves. Like Brandy's mom was like, oh, well, if I tell the police, then the police are going to get mad at me. And so she did that to try to save her own ass. Like, no. Like, there is actually, yes, there is actually a law out there. Like, if you see someone in a parking lot beating a kid, you have to call the police.
We are all mandatory reporters.
We are all mandatory reporters here.
Yeah.
So when it's child abuse, you have to report. So I feel like, personally, in my opinion, and this could be debated, but I feel like she should be charged with something.
Held accountable. Yeah.
Some, like child endangerment, at least.
Yeah. Neglect.
Yeah. Because, I mean, yes, you let this girl email with a grown man. That's disgusting, number one. But then when you saw evidence of abuse, you should have printed that shit off, taken it to the police right then and there.
And for her to say, I didn't want them to think that I was a bad parent. Oh, well, you're doing really great now. The decision that you made really helped. Here you are 20 years later talking about it on a documentary about how you let it continue.
I was so furious.
And honestly, very bold of her to even get on the documentary, because if I had known that I had said that or done that or made that decision, I probably wouldn't have come out and said it.
I feel like they might have handled this back then, because like obviously it did come out, you know, when they found Brandy's Ziploc, which is why they called the mom. And Brandy, there was only 2 people that came forward to talk about Jason and press charges against Jason. And Brandy was being one of them. So I'm sure that they talked with her about her liability in this. My personal opinion is that everyone that he abused after that date of that email, personally, she should get charged with child endangerment to them too.
Because she didn't say something.
Yeah, that's a very strong opinion, but like, I can't imagine, I'm not a mother, but I can't imagine my mom seeing that and not immediately going and raising fucking hell. And I don't even want to know what either one of my parents would do.
Right.
Like you said, like the law better get there first.
Yeah. Well, we'll all have a meeting in the front yard about this. Yeah.
Yeah, he might not be able to have a conversation about it. Yeah. But we'll have a conversation.
We'll have a conversation about it. We need better for kids on sets. We need therapists. I'm not talking about therapists that like you're going to go in and you're going to get paid all this money and do treatment. You know what I'm saying? Like the ones who will actually report if something is wrong. Pull some of us up that are in the trenches of being broke and then do it, because we can live broke again if we get fired. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just think there has to be more protection for these kids in the entertainment industry, because it's like Drake said, I don't know if he said on the podcast or the documentary, but he said they spit us out and we're nothing. You know, we're and they are. We see it time and time again.
He said there wasn't even therapy offered to anybody on set. Like,
No.
After they had the conversation of like, oh, Brian Peck was arrested, how about talking with the kids, having a one-on-one therapy session with these kids to process through that? Because whether or not it happened to any of those kids in that room, that's still a traumatic thing to hear, that this person that you trusted and this person that was like a parental figure for you on this set for so long has abused one of your coworkers.
Yeah. There was not one mental health professional present during that meeting. It was Dan and it was the network's lawyers, and they were like, did this happen to you? And nobody said anything. They said, okay, great, back to work. Going back to the set.
Why the hell would a child at like 13, 14, 15 years old say to another room full of other kids that it was happening to them? They wouldn't say that.
They wouldn't say it.
Like, no one would. Even if that like happened today to me and I was in a room of my coworkers, fuck no, I wouldn't say anything. Like, that's my own business. That's not anyone else in this room's business, you know?
And kids who are already petrified about losing their jobs, about taking away something that they love doing, you know?
Yeah. Because that's always on the table in the, not just the Dan Schneider world, but like the world of Hollywood in general, is you are always threatened with your job.
Yeah.
If you do one thing out of line.
Not just your job, but your future jobs. So not only will you not work on this movie, but you will never work again.
And that's your career. And, you know, people are like, oh, well, you can go out and get another career. But it's kind of like for us, counseling was our dream career. This is what we wanted to do, and we're doing it. So if someone tried to take that away from me, of course I would be furious. And of course, in some ways, I would shut up and be like, okay, well, I'm just going to take this because my job is on the line and I'm doing what I love to do. And I have done that.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to do, to be in like a toxic work environment and be like, okay, well, I have to sit here and shut up.
Yeah, because this is what I worked for and this is what I love doing.
Because I've been told multiple times at previous jobs that I'm too outspoken and that I just need to sit there and not say anything because it's not my place to say that. Even if it is advocating for a client, which is in our code of ethics, to advocate for clients. Apparently, it's not my job to be outspoken and advocate. Anyways, I could go on for days out. About toxic and abusive work environments that try to shut people up when they are loud.
Or abusive power.
So to wrap it up after that really heavy topic that we talked about, we're going to do our intentions for the week. And if you need any therapy after that, just let us know.
We'll refer you out to somebody.
Yeah, because we can't be your therapist.
Yeah. And you know what? Much love to Drake Bell and all the other kids who talked on there. I hope that they are getting the help that they need. I know that Drake is, but hope they all are.
Yeah. You want to go first?
Yeah. So my intention of the week is to get my tire replaced on my car because I've been procrastinating it. And my tire is about to be dead in the sand. So over the fact of me not like being stranded on the side of the road, I would like to get a new tire this week. So hopefully that can happen. But I hate doing anything like that, so I've been procrastinating. Yeah.
Maybe that's what's wrong with my car. I keep having like a service tire monitor system come up. If any car freaks out there know what the hell that means.
It could be it. So yeah, that's my intention, to get my tire changed because I really hate doing it. So
maybe that should be my intention too, is to like go buy discount tire and just be like, hey, can you tell me what's wrong with my tire?
Check these tires.
Maybe we'll go on the same day. We'll just show up to discount tire at the same time.
It's our tires, please.
Can we do a 2-for-1 special?
Yeah.
And not with our salaries.
Woo! And not with our salaries. Woo!
Anyways.
Yeah, we're not splitting that shit. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, my intention for the week is to get moving. I think I said that last week too.
Yeah.
But like, it's kind of the same thing. Like, because last week I was so freaking tired. Like every day, I was so exhausted. I could barely get out of bed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this week is to just like keep it moving.
Keep it moving.
Get your ass up. Get out there and work.
You gotta work, bitch.
Binks, what's your intention for the week? Binks, come here. Come here. Tell me your intention. Come here. Come here. Tell the audience your intention for the week. Okay, guys. Binks is going to tell you his intention for the week. Oh, God. No, he's not. Oh, no, he's not. Okay. Okay.
He said, I'm out. It's none of anybody's business what his intentions are.
Binks, maybe your intention of the week should be to clean your booty.
That should be everyone's intention. It's getting to be summer.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all clean your butts.
Pits and slits. Wash them.
And
sorry.
We're keeping that in this episode.
Did you wash your ass today? Have you seen that video?
Yeah.
If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's a really funny meme of like this dude, and it'll go into like some like serious thing you think it's going, and then it'll like open up something and it'll be this dude like popping out like, did you wash your ass today? Yeah. Pits and slits. Make sure you wash them so you ain't stinky. And we will see y'all next week.
See you next week.
So have a good week, everybody. Bye.
I love you. Bye.